Well, good morning and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Heavyweights University, where we are taking a deep dive into how to flip a house in the future. We're definitely going to use this space to interview some other professionals that are in the field, try to figure out how they do their business, get some tips from them. We're going to double back here in a little while and really dive deep on some of these topics that we brushed over early on, just to make sure we explain exactly all the finer details of finding a house, how to value a house, all those sorts of things. But today we're going to get a little bit more into the flipping, how to go to the next step. Last time we talked about how to get a really good start, how to prep your guys and your team to go ahead and jump into the house and really have an opportunity to get in there and get out and make some good money. Before that, we talked about financing. Before that, we talked about how to figure out what level of rehab you're even dealing with. So jump back, listen to some of those, but we're gonna kick into that. But before we do that, I am here with my real estate friend, my mentor, my guy who's helping me flip a house over at Mapleton. It's Tavis Westbrook. What's going on, Tavis?
Hey, man, I am doing well. Yeah, thanks for the opening.
Thanks for the opening. Yeah, if you don't know, we record early, so I'm 1 cup of coffee in. Tavis is probably into his first cup of coffee there. So it took us a little while to get into gear, and we've been bouncing ideas off of each other. And for those of you who don't know, I'm working on flip number 4, and Tavis has a tenant that's moving out of one of his midterm rentals and moving in. And one of the nice things is about Tavis is he's let me use some of his trades to get Mapleton done. The bad part for him is when they're at my house, they can't be at his house. And so today he needs the cabinet guy and trim guy and his team to be helping him turn over this midterm rental to get ready for his next tenant. And it just so happened that today was the day they were going to be at my, and so we're trying to coordinate that. And I made it very clear early on to all the guys, like, do not ever come to my house first. Always take care of Tavis. I don't want him to think like, hey, next time I'm going to send the B team because I can't afford to lose the A team this time, because I really appreciate it. But yeah, every once in a while they do kind of mix up their schedule, and we have to figure out who's going to be where. So Tavis has flipped over 200 houses. I'm on number 4. And so that's what we're doing here. We're talking about how to flip a house. And, for me, I work full time, and my flip is 45 minutes away. So I'm running back and forth. It's an hour and a half plus whatever time I spend down there. And so this step here is super important, because now, we've gotten into the flip. People are started. They're going to start demoing. They're going to start working for real. And these guys work fast, a lot of them. And you have to be able to give them the vision of what you're wanting. And you have to be able to make it very clear. And maybe it's, writing a little picture on the wall. Maybe it's putting it on a piece of paper. Maybe it's actually doing CAD drawings or something like that. But you have to be able to explain your vision. So Tavis, why don't you take us into this next step? We've gotten a good start. They're going to be over there demoing. They're going to start framing. What's next? What do we need to pay attention to as we get into week 3, week 4 of this project, where we're really starting to redesign this house?
Ashton, so, we talk about this a lot, is kind of working backwards to forwards, and I think it comes true with the design aspect as well, and kind of the overall scope of the project. And so that's looking at your comps, looking at any high comps that are going to help support that high value, and then really diving into, how you compare it to your property and kind of the things that you need to do to be comparable, and the things that you necessarily don't need to do. And so that, having that in mind is going to help create that plan, right? So everything we want to do when we're doing this is operating this as a business, and not some, weekend, warrior plan that we come up with, this harebrained idea we saw on HGTV, and saying, hey, let's go do this. That would be cool. Right. I think you've got to be cautious and be aware. So the big things that you need to tackle first are going to be your repair items, right? Anything that was addressed, in the pre-walkthroughs, and anything that kind of gave you that distressed acquisition, so, obviously foundation, plumbing issues, electrical issues, roof, Things like that. Those are going to be kind of your big ticket items that you have to do that you can't skip over. So those need to be kind of forefront. And then some of the fun design stuff needs to be kind of secondary. But knowing how a house is built. So, we talked about this a little bit in one of our previous episodes of, the foundation comes first. So if there's a repair on the foundation, that has to come first. And then you get into your framing, right? That's the structure that holds the property up. So any kind of wall movement or modifications you're going to making a master shower bigger, or making a pocket door where there was an existing door, or adding a bathroom, or anything like that has to do with some kind of framing work that needs to come second, right? Framing has to happen before you get into electrical and plumbing and HVAC. So it's kind of knowing those sequences, and then from that point, okay, now we've done the framing, now we can do electrical, now we can do plumbing. But you have to think forward enough. When you start doing your electrical plan, you need to be thinking about your cabinet plan. So if you're putting new cabinets in, you need to think, hey, am I redesigning this kitchen? Am I redesigning the layout? So the first couple weeks is very, very crucial, because that's where you have to set appointments to meet trades over there and walk the job physically and start mapping it out. If you don't have a predetermined floor plan, for instance, a set of plans that you've already come up with before you purchase the property and kind of working through that, then you need to be doing that live, right? You need to kind of be walking it with those trades and figure out, okay, this is my vision, this is the plan, and then we're going to start building that together. And then the next thing to think about is, what are the things that take a long time to fabricate? If the cabinets are already existing and all you're doing is changing countertops, that's great. Get the counter guy in there, get the the countertop guy in there day one, day two, to do templates, and go ahead and tell him, hey, go ahead and template it. All right, that way he's already got his templates ready to go. You have to make sure you're not modifying anything, right? Because then he would have to double back and make a trip back. But as long as you're not modifying any cabinets, he can template it. Then you can select your countertops, and then he can start fabrication. So fabrication typically runs 2 to 3 weeks for countertops. So that's something you have to think forward, right? And then other big things, right, maybe flooring, for instance. Like, I use a big flooring company that's turnkey, but I know their scheduling is at least 2 weeks out. And then you can't miss that window. So you have to really think forward to planning ahead and knowing these sequences, and just kind of having all your ducks in a row, so that way you're not sitting on the house several days waiting for the next guy. Or, another thing that happens, and you've been through this, now in a couple projects where you're waiting on a trade, but in the interim you have a trade pop in and say, hey, I can go ahead and do your drywall. I can get this going. It's sitting here, and the trade doesn't care about the sequence, but maybe you didn't complete electrical yet. Maybe you didn't complete your plumbing yet. So, they're hot to trot and they want to get going. And then, you're doubling back, or you're piecemealing it together, and you're creating a lot more headaches than, hey, hold on. I'm not going to start you till next week. Let me get these things out of the way first. And then that way it's much smoother.
Yep.
And then you can get the trades to communicate and work together, but you need to be aware that, are they going to be on top of each other where it's too difficult for them to work together? I think yesterday you had this, right, in the final punch hours of scheduling the cleaning crew to do a final clean, which, you have site finished wood floors throughout the whole entire house. So what's that create? A massive storm of dust. And that has to be cleaned before we can get the painter in there. But there was, punch stuff left over for the drywall guys. There's stuff left over for the trim carpenter guys. There's hardware trim left. There was AC stuff left to do. There was a little bit of electrical left to do. And the cleaning crew wants to make her cycle. Like, she has a system. Everybody has a system, right? Where do they start, and how do they clean, and how do they go step by step? So it's being aware of those
Yeah.
things. And, if you've never done this before, just, make notes and show up. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. Even if you have a GC, I think it's important for you to learn these things and make the time, especially, learning how this process works, because the GC may expect you to know this stuff. And a lot of GCs operate in the sense that they just do what you tell them to do. They don't really think too much on their own. They don't have a sense of design. They don't really want that responsibility of design. They just want to kind of follow your lead, and you tell them to do something, they do it. They don't really care if it was supposed to come first or come second. They're going to charge you. So, a good GC will help guide you, but, it's not to say that everybody will, right?
Yeah, right. Well, and I know the problem I ran into over at Polk, where I did have a GC there, he had his own crew. He worked for a big company, and they had multiple crews. And so he could usually get someone there, but you didn't quite know the quality of the people showing up. And they actually did a lot of rentals. And so the quality of people that were coming out, maybe it's not his primary person that he wants to do, let's say electrical or whatever, but this company's available this week. So they would bring him out, and the quality was really hard to regulate. I didn't quite know who was showing up or what they were doing. And it was really inconsistent, and in general sort of trended towards more rental finish as opposed to a flip finish. And there is a big difference there. They're real quick in and out. They're not caring too much about tolerances and the nitpicky little details of this doesn't fit just perfect. But when you're flipping it, you want it to look great, and they're just trying to get it ready to rent for another 5 years. So it's definitely different. So when I started showing up more and more over at the Polk property is really when I realized there's a problem here, because until then I just assumed, hey, it's going great. He knows what he's doing. He's hiring the guys. And after a while, it's like, man, this is not going well. It's taking forever. It's really expensive. The quality is not good. So when I started spending time there is really, really, really when I made a difference. And I will say some of the stuff that when you start looking forward and then going backwards, the things that I had to pay attention to, some of it's moving walls a little bit. I know we ran into that at Mapleton. We have these pony walls in the bathrooms. And then you also have framing in the soap boxes for the showers. And this is something that's going to come into play weeks later with tile and that sort of thing. But you have to think through, okay, I want this little pony wall here to cover up where the toilet's going to go, so to give some privacy. But I know I want a soap box, and so it needs to be framed this way. Then you look up on the ceiling. Okay, I want a rain shower, but I also need some light over here. And, I want the light to be sort of centered. I don't want it to be just this random hole in the middle of the shower. So you have to think with that design, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the full, I know every single color I'm going to use and everything I'm going to finish, everything right now. But you do have to know, okay, if we're putting a rain shower here, a light has to go here, which means it needs to have a switch on the wall. Where would it make sense for the switch to be when you walk into the bathroom? I want an LED mirror because that's what we're wanting to do in this house. Well, that means it has to be pre-wired for LED, not a vanity light, which is much higher. Those are all discussions that I had zero idea about until we started doing Mapleton together. And all of that stuff really had to happen really, really early on, because that's where you start doubling back. The electrician comes in and does the rough. He puts the box way high for the vanity light. No, actually I want LED. Now he drops it down. Now that's more work for the sheetrock guy. And, it's like, it compounds one thing here, one thing there. It's another day. It's another 4 or 5 hours. And, that's just money. That's just over and over and over.
Sure.
And so, I think for you have like these overriding, this is where keeping your design similar from house to house really helps, because now your guys know, in general, you like the LEDs. In general, you like your light over the shower right here, and their switch typically on the left side right here. And is that right? I mean, after a while, they just kind of know like your design style. You want a soapbox here, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I think it's we've talked about this before. One of the very, very important parts of this business is building your team. And I think the more that you do business with this team, then yes, they will understand more of what you expect. And other times, there's definitely been several times that I'm like, why would you do it like this? We've always done it this way. Why are you doing something different? So mistakes still happen. I think my question for you is like, when they started your electrical rough at Mapleton, were you there and walked the job with them when they first started it, or did they just kind of do what they thought needed to happen? Like, because I mean, you have a lot of like light placements in that house, which it's more than I would. It's more than I would typically do. Just because of the cost. I mean, because I know every light costs a certain dollar amount, right? So it looks great, but like, you know, some of it's overkill in the sense of like what needed to be done versus, you know, what looks great, right?
Yeah.
The other
that
thing
happened at Polk too.
Yeah. And so I guess asking you that question, were you there when they did the rough in, or did you come in after the fact?
I know the very first. So when Mapleton started, I had the GC. He had his electrician, and I do not remember being there when they first started doing their stuff. I may have told the GC, hey, I want can lights in the master. I want a fan box in the guest bedroom, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember going through and circling, okay, yes, no. And that became a huge problem over at Polk, because I don't know if you remember that, but I think we had like 15 can lights between the kitchen and the breakfast and the living room, you know. I mean, it did look cool in a way. Mapleton actually is good. Hindsight, I probably would have put a few can lights in the guest bedrooms because they just have the fan. And it's a little dark for my taste. But, you know, you learn those types of things. I know we did a better job with Callie because we actually were pointing out the LED boxes and we were pointing out switches. But even to that point, I mean, now we don't have CAD drawings or anything like that.
That was your second rough.
That was my
your
second rough. Yes,
yeah.
Because yeah. But even Callie, you know, that's the electrician that knows a ton. He's worked with Tavis forever. He knows exactly how Tavis wants to run it. Even then, we punched the other day. And for whatever reason, you don't know what this punching means. Basically, you're walking through the house, you're making a punch list. Like, these are the things that we need to tackle, and you do it constantly. So you make a punch list,
right?
These are
everything
on the final. Like this is a problem. Come back, fix this. And so Callie knows tons, and his guys have worked there. And they know what they're doing. There's still 5 or 6 things like, Callie, why is there not a switch to the LED light? Why is there not a switch to the vent in the laundry room? Things just get overlooked, and they're in there. They're just trying to get in and get out, and you know, so it still happens. But yeah, walking through with Callie was a different experience because, you know, he asked the right questions. Hey, do you want to switch here? Do you want it to be a 2-way switch? Do you want it to work the vent and the light? All these like intricacies that for me was new. Like, well, I don't know. What do you do? And well, normally we do it this way. Okay, great. But moving forward, I know, okay, now we have to have that conversation.
And, you know, and for you listeners out there, I mean, look, it doesn't have to be necessarily, I think it's a good idea to be hands-on. But at the end of the day, you can also pay for design plans in the beginning that would cover, you know, for instance, Mapleton's a tier 2. So a lot of you guys out there should be only dealing with like a tier 1 on your first flip, right? Which is cosmetics. You're not changing any walls. You're staying in the wall. You're staying inside the walls. You're working with what's there. You're not really getting creative and changing floor plans and moving walls and opening walls and things like that. So tier 2 is what Mapleton is. In fact, there's a bathroom added. So it was a 4-bedroom house. Took it to a 3-bedroom, 3-bath with a study now versus, you know, the formal living that was there before is now a study. And it turned out great. I think the function and flow for the home is great. Now, mind you, it's all inside of the outside walls, but the floor plan was heavily modified. And, you know, we did this originally walking with your GC and kind of mapped this out with a pencil on the wall because it wasn't super complicated, you know, where we were doing things. We moved a couple doors, you know, we got rid of a bedroom and closets, and then we're able to make that space the master suite, if you will. But it does make sense, and sometimes it could be expensive, you know, like, for instance, if we're doing a project like Mapleton, with 3D renderings, our cost is going to be somewhere around like $3,000 to $3,500. If you hire me to design that on CAD with 3D renderings, the nice thing though is we can pre-design and choose all those paint colors and tile colors and schematics and everything up front. And so we can pretty much do all that design work, and then you have a complete map, right? Like it takes all of those design and guessing and second guessing yourself out of the equation, because we did it up front and spent the time up front virtually doing all of that. So, for you people out there that maybe your head's hurting just hearing this conversation because you're like, holy crap, this is a lot of stuff and I don't even know what you're talking about. What's the difference between a light switch going to a fan and an LED, and what do you mean? That's right. Where these things happen. Then we put together an electrical plan, and then basically the trades would follow those plans. So you would give the plans to your plumber, you give the plans to your electrician. You still should be there on site if you can, to go over the plans quickly the first time that the guys are showing up to work and make any kind of markups that maybe the plans didn't cover, or maybe, we thought the switch was on the right side of the door and it's on the left side of the door, what's existing. There's little details like that happen. But at the end of the day, following that plan is much more efficient way of doing like a tier 2 project than the way that this was done right at Mapleton. Now,
probably
I can do what you did, and you're learning to do what you did and walk it with the trades and kind of think and go at the same time. But just to let you guys know that does exist. That's another added expense that you need to consider when you're taking on a project like this, is you may need to allot money for plans. So it's just something to keep in mind. Like, for instance, in my budget sheet, when I get into tier 2 and tier 3 stuff, I've had allotted expenses in there for building plans and permits, for instance. You have those expenses that are categorized in there.
Hey, Tavis, just 1 second. Let me pause. Pablo just called me. He's there. Hold on 1 second. Hey, Pablo, how are you? Hey, do you have the key? Oh, 7521. Yep. And then there's also a key to the lock on the back gate. The key is in that box as well. And then in the garage, I did not get a chance to get back there yesterday. I'm going to come this afternoon. So anything, the wood or whatever, if you want to put it up on that top shelf out there and get it out of the way of the power washer, or if you want to put it out in the dry, I don't know, whatever I'm going to come pick all that stuff up this afternoon. Okay, I appreciate it. 7521. I'll text it to you. Okay, thanks. All right, sorry about that. All right. Okay. I know you were talking about your design stuff, and I was going to say something there. So, and I was going to say too, on the design stuff, I will definitely do that next time, because especially on a big project like this, to me, it'll at least pay for itself, if not save money. And it actually takes a lot of the worry about it, because if you're there and you don't know construction and your electrician is calling you and saying, hey, what are we doing here? My guys are over there right now. And you tell them the wrong thing. Well, now you're paying for them to come back and fix it. And maybe they'll do it, but they kind of roll their eyes and this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. If you can hand them a really complete set early on and you're all on the same page, well, if they mess that up, or their guys go out and they don't put the LED box in, for example, and they put it in a vanity light switch or a light box in the bathroom, well, you go back and you say, well, actually this was on the drawing. We wanted, then they go fix it. It's on them to fix it. So you're going to save that money. But in general, they're going to know they can just walk in, look at the plan, do their work, get out. And when you're using hard money or private money or whatever, time is money. I mean, it adds up really, really quickly. And so if you're saving a week or two, plus you're saving some change order type fees, you're going to pay for itself in just having the plan out there. And then I'll say from a design perspective, getting to actually see the colors on the wall and what the house is going to look like from the outside with this trim color, and you can do all that on the renderings. That saves a ton of time and worry, because despite all your planning, you go out there and you're like, I don't know, he's supposed to paint today, I'm going to go look at it tomorrow, I hope it's good. It kind of saves a lot of that sort of consternation.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the summary of this is just really knowing your plan and putting together a plan. And it goes back to how we started this conversation, is you need to know your plan based on, what you want the end result to be, and then working backwards to achieve that, right? You're going to have those wild cards of repairs in the middle of that. But, some people get carried away too with design and, doing these, these cool accent walls with 1x2 and, doing things like that. You had an idea of doing the metal inserts, which I thought was really cool in the bar area.
Oh, yeah.
But it adds another layer of time and money, which maybe that wouldn't be that expensive, but it's something out of the ordinary that would have looked cool, and probably would have got some really good, feedback. But it was another step for you that was going to take up time and take up you trying to resource where you would buy this material, and then how is it going to be mounted in the cabinet, and it was kind of multi-layers, right? That would have been involved. Instead of spending your time doing that, then you spent time and money on the concrete guy, for instance, fixing the back steps, but that was something that we knew,
right,
based on that negative drainage, it was going to come up as a problem later. So, and the average person may not catch that may have not been an issue until inspection. But when you're doing these kind of projects, you got to keep in mind that the consumer's mindset is you're a builder and you're building a new house, even though that's not the case. But in their mentality, they think, oh, you're an investor, you're making a lot of money on me, you're selling this at the top of the market, and therefore, all these things need to be fixed, right? And if they're not fixed, then they're gonna hammer you on giving credits or getting these things done, which may have just been the way the house was built 50 years ago. And it's not anything to do with a defect. It's just the way the house was built compared to the way a house is built today. And you ran into this on Polk, and it was a nightmare. And it was also kind of just the perfect storm of the right agent, the buyers, you being stressed, you ready to get it off your books, all these different things that came along with stress that made that even worse. And you had somebody that just basically sent you the whole inspection report and was like, fix it. And
right.
That's not fun. And, in other cases, you get, people that get an inspection report back. It was a tier 1 in Irving that I just did. But, the fact that they came to me and didn't ask for anything, I was like, holy cow, this never happened.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Ever.
For that to happen right after I had gone through Polk, and then I think the next one you did, you're like, I don't even know if they sent me anything. They must have left some pages off. No, I was over there for days, just sweating, just trying to figure it out. And man, this is easy. No, I'm glad it went well.
Yeah.
But that speaks to honestly really is the product of you thinking of a ton of those problems from the beginning, working backwards, making sure it's done properly to begin with, and then it doesn't come up on inspection. Now, the agent that was with me, if she was at your house, I kind of think something would have popped up. But sure. Yours was much more clean, much more put together. And it's one of those things where once they see 2 or 3 things that are wrong, and then they're asking for this, well, let's just ask for this. Oh, and the other mindset on the buyer side is they think that you just have this team of people that's on call, and all you have to do is, send the sheetrock fairies over there and the paint guys, and it all just fixes itself. And you have this endless cache of people and money, and that's kind of their mindset. And if you can head that off and all those little bitty details, let's take care of this, let's take care of that, that's just less for them to add to that that narrative of like, oh, we need to get people over here. And it actually adds to the, hey, we know what we're doing. This is all taken care of properly. The whole house is like this. We're not hiding anything, and you're going to have a much easier time selling it for sure.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's, and again, it just goes with experience and just doing it and putting yourself out there and then learning from the past. I mean, that's, my flips, 10, 12 years ago were not to the quality that they are now. And they didn't cost as much either. I mean, they cost a lot more now because I can't unknow what I know. Right. So,
right.
I probably pay more than most of my competitors when it comes to electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. But that's just because, I know what I know now. I hire the team. I'm paying a premium for it. It's not like I'm getting some crazy discount.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm dealing with people
Right.
that know what they're doing, that are professionals. Callie's one of those guys that he does it right. And he knows what's going to come up with not only the city inspection, but what's going to come up with the third-party Trek inspection as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, we just, if we know what's going to come up, we're just kind of addressing those things up front, I will tell you that was one thing at the Irving property that I chose not to do. It was a newer panel, but somebody prior to me had changed the panel and left it in the master closet, which it should be on the outside wall. It should have been a waterproof box on the outside of the wall to be code. At some point in time, somebody changed it, so it wasn't an old Federal box, or anything like that. It was a GE box, but it was inside the master closet, and it was going to cost me, another $2,500 or more to move it to the outside. And so, for instance, that was one of those things I kind of left alone because of the budget, and I was like, I'll wait and see. And if it comes up on the inspection, then I'll go ahead and plan on, moving it. But I left it alone. And so it came up on the inspection. And, the agent mentioned it, said, well, it came up, and, we know that, it's not what code is today, but, we're okay with it. Maybe the seller will, maybe the buyer will change it later. Okay, great.
Yep.
Right. So, I mean, but I had to be aware that I knew that it might come up, but I just rather waited to the end to see where my sales price was and be able to negotiate it at that point in time, if that was the case. But a lot of situations I go ahead and change it. But that was one that I was like, no. And if it was a Federal box or if it was one of the boxes that have been banned, then I definitely would have changed it. But like I said, somebody had already upgraded the box before, and it was on the inside wall, so. We left
and you make those choices. Every once in a while, you just have to get in and get out, and that's how you know who's buying this, what are they willing to pay for, and you know your budget and what has to be changed and that sort of thing. And so as we wrap up this phase here, and we've talked a little bit about design. I know some of the resources that I've used and you've used. Once you're getting that feel of okay, what are we going for here? Do I need to do a pony wall? Am I taking some of the structural stuff out? For instance, Tavis really, I know, relies heavily on the app Houzz, Houzz, I believe. Pinterest is always good. Instagram is okay. Be careful about Instagram because a lot of those are AI-generated images, and they're just not realistic. So it's going to be very difficult to find something there that you can do.
I'm starting to see that. I see a lot of like really cool architecture with like the dark colors and schematics, and they're on the side of a cliff, and I'm like, oh, this thing is awesome. And then the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, these are all AI, man. Like, these are not really built. And they're super cool, but some of them, I'm like, this thing is not built. There's no way.
Right. No, in the comments, they'll say, oh, what color is that? And they just never can tell you because it's AI-generated color. It is not a Sherwin-Williams color. So it just doesn't exist. It's in the watch world, they call that material unobtainium, and it's just everything is built out of unobtainium, and like you're wasting your time. So good look on Houzz. Pinterest I think is good, but honestly, get out go to some open houses. Go find some other houses nearby that have been flipped and go see what they're doing, what materials they're using. You'll find out, like, this feels cheap. This feels really cool. I never want to use that. I'll definitely use that. That, to me, you're there, you're touching it and feeling it. That's really where you're going to learn all this stuff.
So one of the big things for me, and I tell people all this when I'm consulting on design, is Pinterest. Sometimes you go down this rabbit hole. Like you find something you like, and then it clicks here, and it clicks here, and it clicks here, and it goes to this story and this story. And to me, it's hard just to grab like an image and an idea and pull that image back, right? So I'm not a big fan of the way Pinterest operates. And again, sometimes like just finding a paint color will go down a rabbit hole and then sends you to some place they want you to pay money for it. Like, wait, what? You want me? Now I'm on an Etsy page for some reason off of Pinterest that's wanting me to pay for a swatch of green colors, right? Versus going to Houzz, Houzz. The benefit of going to Houzz is I can do a genre, or I can type in, butcher block countertops and kitchen, and it'll show me 30 images of different ideas, or mix of walnut and white cabinets in kitchen, and it'll show me specifically that. Or I can say, exterior of home in a style. So what I like about that is then it just gives me that overall genre of kind of like, okay, I want a Colorado rustic modern, elevation. Well, it's going to spit out 30 different options for me, and I'm going to be like, hey, this is cool. Now we're in the style, right? So that's what I like about Houzz. And they used to not like you doing the screenshots. I think they've gotten a little bit more better with that now. Yeah. Anyways, over the years, I kind of push people that way. And then you can actually, a lot of times, you can actually click on the picture and then go into details, and it'll give you more information and paint colors and stuff, depending on what people are willing to share.
Yeah. Yeah, Tavis is protective of colors, so just be careful of, Tavis would be one of those, he's worked hard to come up with an aesthetic, so, but that's the thing. You hire someone like Tavis, you get all the knowledge, and, you're going to get, not only are you getting color knowledge, you're getting layout, you're getting, hey, this looks cool in this picture, but this is why it's difficult. Or he knows how to talk to the cabinet guy and say, hey, this is what they're going for. Let's do this drawer, this drawer, this drawer. So definitely an advocate for, hiring Tavis or some professional designer that can actually lay it out for you. You'll save a ton of money. It's a fun process. They look awesome. Go look on his Instagram. He's got several projects there, a lake house that they did. It just is unbelievable what they can do. So I'm a huge advocate for that. So, well, why don't we start wrapping up? This is our series of flipping. We're going to probably do a couple more. We're going to get to the finish line of the flip. We're going to talk about marketing it and going ahead and selling it, the things you need to pay attention to. And then we're going to double back and, start talking a little bit more about some of the topics that we brushed over early on. We're going to start doing some interviews in this spot. If you haven't, check out our podcast that comes out towards the end of the week. Around Friday, Saturday, depending if I'm traveling or not and how the editing's going. But towards the end of the week, we do one that's more of a market update, a little of our higher level of the news that's happening, and especially in the Dallas area. And then we talk about just some of the generic, real estate topics there that are happening in the world and in our market. And so it's a little bit more of a fun take on real estate, and we have a great time with it. So check that out. Like it, subscribe it, share it with a friend. If you're getting any value from it, give us some feedback. Tell us what you'd like to hear about, and we will definitely dive deep. And we will check with you this next Friday, Saturday, and hope to see you there.